welcome back to TechByte. I got a little bit of a different video for you today. This is going to be sort of like a public service announcement for all those of you who either live in the US and are planning on taking your DJI Spark, or any DJI drone for that matter, outside of the US to go fly somewhere else on vacation, let's say, or for those of you who live outside of the US and are planning on buying a DJI drone. Now in this video we'll be focusing on the DJI Spark specifically, but as far as I know this applies to all other DJI drones. That being said, let's dive right in. Come on. There we go. Got it. So first and foremost, let me start off by saying that I have had the DJI Spark for several weeks now. I've taken it on quite a few flights, although not as many as I would have liked because the weather here isn't very permitting of that. However, I do feel like I've flown this drone enough to get a general idea of what it's like. And so to sum it all up really quickly before we actually get into the part of the video where I tell you about my problem with DJI drones outside of the US, I would say that the DJI Spark is pretty awesome. So the prime demographic for the DJI Spark are mainly going to be people who, aren't really serious about drones and just want to take a couple pictures and videos and send them to friends and family. I don't fly drones or capture aerial videos commercially, but I do enjoy getting a bit more complex with the movements that I make with the drone in the air and getting some cool dynamic shots because it's just what I enjoy doing. So I decided to pass on the 4K quality and the impressive 27-minute flight time that the Mavic offers, and instead I opted for the DJI Spark, which I'll be able to take a lot more places, fly a lot more places, and most importantly, do so without drawing as much of a crowd. So obviously I missed out on quite a few cool features when going with the Spark over the Mavic, but that is not to say that you can't get cinematic results with this. Now one really good example for that is Francis Dercott. He has some really impressive DJI Spark footage, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. I asked him, in fact, if it was indeed Spark footage, and he assured me, yes, it was. So as you'll be able to see here, it is definitely possible to get some very nice looking, very cinematic footage with the DJI Spark. The only thing is that, in my opinion, it is going to be a lot trickier to get that kind of footage out of a Spark as opposed to a bigger drone. That's mainly due to the fact that you have to be extremely careful when piloting this drone, as it is very small and can get carried around by the wind, and you only have a 2-axis gimbal and a 1080p camera. That means that if your footage does end up looking a bit more shaky than you would like it to, you basically won't have any of the room to play with that you have in 4K to stabilize and crop down the 1080p video. Unless you want to go to 720. Alright, so that's what I have to say about the DJI Spark. Alright, so that's it for how I feel about the DJI Spark. Now let's move on to the problem I have with it outside of the US. Now the biggest problem lies...
Sorry, I don't know that.
Now the biggest problem lies in the fine print. Where else? If you go buy a Spark on the DJI website, you'll see that it says that you can reach a maximum of 1.3 miles or 2 kilometers in terms of distance. However, if you scroll down and go look at the tech specs for the remote controller, you'll see that that only applies in FCC territory. Now the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, is only present in the US, and there they said that the maximum Wi-Fi transmission power you can use is 26 dBm. So if your remote controller outputs that power in ideal conditions, you'll be able to get those 1.3 miles or 2 kilometers. However, there's also another mode called the CE mode on the remote controller. The CE is the European Commission, and they set their maximum transmission power to 18 dBm. So as you can see, that is quite a bit less, which means that under ideal conditions, you'll be able to get a maximum range of 500 meters, which is a fourth of the 2,000 you were supposed to get in the US. Now the question is, can you get to 500 meters? Because 500 meters is enough if it works well. However, I haven't been able to get past 150, and that was with constant dropouts in the video feed and the RC signal to the drone, which meant that if I was controlling the gimbal would stop receiving input and temporarily stop, and it would create for a really bad looking video. Now one thing to keep in mind is that I do live in a very big and very crowded city, so everyone has their cell phones, their Wi-Fi routers, which all cause interference. So if you live in a smaller city, you might be able to get closer to those 500 meters than I was. Sometimes my video feed and RC signal dropped out after less than 20 meters, which is honestly just kind of disappointing. Now there are workarounds to this. You can quote unquote hack your DJI Spark controller to make it think it is in FCC mode, which will increase the power output and therefore quadruple your range. in theory. Whether or not that works remains to be seen. Now, if you want to find out how to do this, I'm not going to dive into that topic in this video, but there are lots of other videos out there on YouTube which will show you how to get your controller into FCC mode. So that is all I have to say. If you have a DJI drone, especially a DJI Spark, and are flying it outside of the US, look at the fine print and know that you only get 500 meters instead of 2 kilometers of range. So if that's important to you, then I think you should probably go with a different drone. Maybe the Mavic. I like the Mavic. I like it a lot. Alright, but that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed it, if you found it informative or entertaining, let me know in the comments below. Click that like button down there, it helps out a lot. And if you think I've earned it, consider subscribing, as it would really mean a lot. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.